I'm Brandi Kruse. Welcome to the final episode of our special series, Truth Tellers. Today, we're sitting down with Tamara Pietzke. Her story might sound familiar to unDivided viewers and listeners because we've had her on the show before, although never in depth quite like this. Tamara Pietzke became a whistleblower, whether she knew it or not, when as a therapist, she spoke out about the practices at MultiCare. She was being, in her words, and she wrote about this in the Free Press, essentially expected to just refer kids to the gender clinic at Marybridge Children's Hospital without necessarily addressing, as a therapist, or going through some of the underlying mental health issues that they might be dealing with. So we are thrilled to have Tamara Pietzke back on the show and to celebrate her as an important truth teller. Tamara, welcome back to unDivided.
Thank you so much for having me.
So many good things have happened since the first time we had you in here. Yeah. So we're going to update everyone. But first, if they've never heard your story before, give them the story of how you came to be a unwilling, outspoken advocate for sanity.
Yes, absolutely. So start back in March of 2023.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I had a client come in and say that it was a teenager, say they identified as a wounded male dog. And I remember talking to my colleagues at that point and being like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? Like, I know we want to be non-judgmental and provide a safe place for people to explore whoever they are. But like, at what point is it concerning and is it a mental health issue? And everyone was like, my boss, my coworkers, they were like, if the client isn't identifying it as a problem, then it's not one. Like, just be like, congratulations, I'm glad you know who you are. Like, let's tailor life around this new identity of yours. And I honestly didn't know what to do with that. I was like, okay. And so I just kind of like didn't touch that topic with the particular client and just talked about other things going on in their lives. And then in September of 2023, we had a mandatory gender affirming care training. And I did a lot of research prior to the training, just being like, what is gender affirming care? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And I came to the realization that like it is terrifying. And so I drafted this letter saying that I wasn't going to go to the training, and I sent it to everyone that I came across who had written an article saying that this is dangerous, and anyone who had like an organization. I sent it to everybody, and I was like, I might lose my job over this. So can you read this letter and just like let me know that I'm not completely off base here? And my responses were like, no, you're right, but like, don't send it. Like, go to the training and ask these questions, because if you don't go, you're going to render yourself irrelevant, and then they're going to fire you, and then you don't have any room anymore to make change. So I went, and it was like a virtual training. There was 122 of my colleagues, and I just asked some basic questions like, hey, if countries in Europe are pulling back here, like, why are we rushing forward and mandating this? And I was just met with so much hostility. They said, leave politics out of this. And I know I'm so like naive. I was like, I didn't say anything about the president. Like, I don't understand
what does politics have to do with this?
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? And you're doing harm to clients, and like, it was horrible. Like, I couldn't even work. I was just like crying. It was awful. And then after that, my boss called me and was like, that was not the right place to ask those questions. And so I started sending questions through email and keeping a record of everything that was sent back to me. And the resounding response I got was like, hey, we are not going to agree on this. Like, you're wrong. This is best practice. And you better figure out your biases so that you don't lose your clients. And then they reported me to risk management eventually, because I had a client, a 13-year-old with an extensive trauma history, come in, and they didn't even know they had a gender clinic appointment coming up. Their dad asked me to write a letter so that they could start testosterone. The client had never even said anything about feeling uncomfortable in their body. And so I was like, I don't think I shouldn't be writing a letter for this client. And so I was reported to risk management, and I was like, finally, I can talk to somebody who's sane, and we can look at this client's chart together and realize like, we can't just be blindly like writing letters for kids to start hormone therapies. And risk management decided that I was the risk and took the client for me. And it was at that point that I was like, I cannot work for an organization that I don't respect. Like, I think we are hurting kids. And no matter what I say, no matter how loud I try to scream it, it's like no one cares.
Damn, that was the best synopsis ever. That's the first I heard the story, though, about because I think the last times we talked, it was we talked about the girl client more, but somebody thought they were a wounded dog. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the absurdity of this place that we got to, where you're a therapist, mm-hmm. and you're not allowed to talk to your client who's come to you for therapy about believing that they're a wounded dog.
Nope.
So you can't really do your job as a therapist.
Nope.
I'm just kidding, if you have to bypass that one, that might be the root of a lot of other things. But your reaction that you mentioned having in the moment, which I hadn't heard you talk about before, to be confused about, what do you mean I'm being political?
Yeah.
It's the normal reaction. None of this should be political, because it's the other side that's politicized it. So your story was published. You did an op-ed for the Free Press. It got a ton of attention, which is when we learned about you and, the stand that you'd taken. How has your life changed since the Free Press published your story?
Well, after I left MultiCare, I started at a new place. And as soon as the article came out, they let me go. They just said, you're not the right fit for this position, didn't really give me any more information. So then I was single mom of 3 kids, no income. It was so terrifying. And in March, I started my own practice. So I've slowly been building up clients and just getting to support myself and my family. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was something you brought up wanting to do, starting your own practice and not knowing really how to so how are people finding you?
Most of the people come through like Psychology Today, I find, but then I do have a handful who have heard me on your show or other podcasts and stuff, and they reach out and want someone to talk with their child or just help coach them through how to navigate this with their kid.
Yeah, somebody who knows that you're going to look at it from all angles.
Yes.
Consider everything and figure out what's going on with their kid. I have urged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. Why? We all need insurance. Why else? We could all save a little bit of money. So many undivided viewers and listeners throughout 2024 saved thousands upon thousands of dollars by doing the First Mark Challenge. What does it entail? Well, you schedule some time with First Mark, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. They'll go over all your current insurance plans with you, talk about your insurance needs, and then they'll go out, they'll shop the market for you, and they'll come back with their recommendations. Undivided viewer Sarah just finished the First Mark Challenge. She said, we're now saving over $1,100 annually for our auto and home combo. We did end up paying more for earthquake insurance than we are now, but First Mark told us our earthquake coverage was terrible, so we needed to pay a little more to know that we're properly covered should a quake happen. She said, I'm so glad I finally talked to them. My only complaint is that we should have made this change months ago. And I hear so many stories like that. So don't wait. Take the First Mark Challenge today. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. Did you notice how the market responded right after the election? Are you happy with how your retirement portfolio is positioned? Is your portfolio actively managed? Well, maybe it's time to get another perspective. It's always smart to get a second opinion when it comes to critical health decisions. Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer at Bulwark Capital Management, feels it's no different when it comes to the health of your retirement portfolio. You can get that second opinion with Bulwark's free Know Your Risk Portfolio Review, where they'll cover the impacts of the election, an outlook for 2025, plus a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, and give your retirement as much upside as possible. You only get one retirement. Get a second opinion. Schedule your free portfolio review now at knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. The real estate market has been pretty slow, but that doesn't mean that you can't still get a great price for your home. So if you're thinking about selling your home in 2025, reach out to our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. Wes and his team have an innovative marketing strategy to make sure that your home stands out when it hits the market. He can also help make sure that any cosmetic upgrades to your home are made. He can manage those projects. They can even help you pay for it up front through something called their Listing Boost Concierge service. So make sure you check that out. Go to their website, sellwithwes.com. Start by using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. You know, we've had you on several times, obviously, and people won't know that behind the scenes, we've all been kind of keeping in touch because there was a real backlash toward Marybridge, toward the Children's Hospital for having this gender clinic from some pretty high-level donors. When did was it through us or someone else that you started? You don't have to name names. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but when you started to realize or hear that there were some big donors who were saying, I don't support the kind of stuff Tamara is exposing here.
Yeah.
That had to have just been an awesome feeling.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Just knowing that, like, because I remember I came on here and then you had actually mentioned that to me and I was like, oh my gosh, my voice has mattered in some small capacity, because all I'm seeing is like how I'm being penalized for this and how people seem to not care and nothing's changing, but like people are still listening and paying attention. It was so encouraging. And then of course after that, like MultiCare filed a complaint against me and the state's investigating me. But
yeah, I want to talk about some of that and where that's at, because MultiCare did come out in this. It wasn't a letter they publicized publicly right away. It was behind the scenes to some bigger donors and stuff, saying that it's reevaluating the gender-based care that it gives for minors. So your takeaways from the changes they said that they're pursuing?
Yeah. So when I read it, I was like, I'm so glad that this is getting some attention. But also there was a part of me that was like, I don't know. I feel like they're trying to please everybody in the way that they worded it. Like, what is actually happening here? Because I felt like, are you trying to give hope to the people who are like, this needs a change, without offending anybody who's like on the other side? Because that's kind of how it felt. And so I was like so excited that like it's getting some attention and they're addressing it. But also I wanted more clarity on like, what's going to change here though?
Yeah. And we're kind of waiting to find out, right? How much of that was actually a genuine desire to change and to be a little more thoughtful before sending a kid to the gender clinic.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from kind of insiders about what might be happening there now?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah. But they're going out. Are they still going after you?
So we sent our response letter to the state in June and we haven't heard anything since.
Just to back up, what did they go after you for in the first place?
So they said I had shared too much client information, although we had been very careful not to release any PHI. They said that I wasn't being gender affirming and that I had suggested that gender dysphoria. I was like distress, not just gender dysphoria was a mental illness, which it's in the DSM. So I don't know how they can take offense to that.
But how does the state go after the state? Really, part of their complaint against you is that you're not gender affirming?
Yeah.
So you can't be? Is that illegal or something? Or just against your license? Or
no idea.
Okay. So you've done a response letter, but there's no indication that the state plans to drop this action against you. What is their end goal?
I have no idea. So I don't know if they're just going to try to make an example of me, if they're going to try to take my license, if they're just trying to cause me distress by like making me live in this limbo of not knowing what's going to happen.
They could actually take your license. That's something that's
my lawyers
over
don't.
This?
My lawyers don't think that that's going to happen, but they haven't. It's possible that they could try.
Yeah. What has the reaction been from others who do what you do? Do you get contacted by other child therapists or therapists?
So through organizations where people are like-minded, yes, I have like made some connections that way. But as far as like when somebody is looking for a therapist for their child and I'm not able to see them for some reason and they ask for like a referral, it's so hard to know. Like I feel like I don't know who I would point you to. It's been pretty isolating.
Yeah. So you haven't found this community of people who does what you do and feels the way you feel?
No, I have, like through Therapy First and stuff. But but it's not super local. They're all spread out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what is the difference now when you sit down with a client now? I'm talking specifically a young person in your own practice without the rules, that you were forced to follow before. What is the difference in how you approach their care versus how you would have had to approach it previously?
I feel like I can just slow down and like be a person and not have these voices in my head of being like, don't forget to do this or don't forget to do that. Or if you ask these questions, they're going to say that you're trying to like convert them or something. Like I make sure that when I talk to parents about seeing their child, especially if they have gender distress of any sort, I say like, I have no desire to talk your kid out of who they are. Like, I just feel like it's our job as therapists to create a safe place for them to navigate that before we just like rush them to be medicalized. Like that is insane to me that is the practice elsewhere.
Yeah. So you definitely still do have clients though, who are, parents who have their kids who are suffering from gender dysphoria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have, I don't know how much of this you can tell me. So just, you can tell me if you can. I mean, because you've been so outspoken on this issue, I imagine the parents who would gravitate towards you are parents who are very distressed by their child thinking that they're a different gender.
Yeah.
So how much does that factor in? Because it's kind of the opposite, right? Like you shared stories before when you were at Marybridge about, at MultiCare rather, about parents like, hey, my kid doesn't even know they have they have an appointment for a gender hormone therapy, but it's almost like the parents wanted it. This must be very much the opposite, but you're there for the patient, which is the child. So how do you navigate a situation where you're considering the parents' concerns and desires?
Sure. So I always tell the parents, like, if your kid was to Google me, would they still want to meet with me? Because I want them to know, I want them to feel like they can trust that I just want what's best for them ultimately. And that has nothing to do with me being like, no, you can't be whoever you want to be. So I just want to make sure that like the parent is aware that like they will find something out about me if they Google me. And so we have to make sure that we're on the same page before I agree to work with them, because oftentimes teenagers want their therapist to accomplish something as far as like getting them closer to where they want to be.
Yeah. Without divulging patient information, obviously, I guess what's going on with kids? Because this wasn't something that was happening when I was a kid.
No.
This wasn't, I mean, yeah, you had some kids coming out as gay, but it wasn't a lot. And I think, society has shifted a little bit. But it's a totally different thing where now you have kids who, they have like 30 different descriptions for how they identify as their gender or sexual orientation. I mean, how do you make sense of that?
Yeah, it's so hard. So I feel like I've kind of just lived into some answers, and I still have a lot of questions, but I feel like what I'm seeing a lot is a lot of these kids are neurodivergent in some way, and oftentimes they have just a ton of internet access. So there seems to be some link between like social media or what they're seeing or reading online, and maybe a sense of just like not fully fitting in or belonging in the world in general. And then add to that being a teenager, which is a hard transition period for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think we're just compounding all that stuff. And then something about COVID and just being so isolated and so much more internet time, I just feel like that all kind of like added up to create the situation that we're in now.
Like some social pressure, some social influence.
So yeah, I guess, or just like feeling like, okay, here's a community of people who understand me, or where I can maybe fit in, or maybe this is why I don't feel like I fit in the first place, or yeah, oftentimes they're reading things online about gender dysphoria, and then they just start to identify that with that.
I'm curious what like you see kind of the extent of the role of a therapist being, because I mean, I've been to therapy, I've been to therapy for a broken heart or for whatever issues, or stress at work. And at least in my experience, if my therapist thought I was like thinking about things sort of in an unhealthy way, they would like course correct me, right? So you'd mentioned that, and to the parents, not my job to like dispute who your child thinks they are, but like you mentioned, somebody thought they were a wounded dog. So as a therapist, do you try to direct kids away from like absurd identities? If that makes sense?
I haven't had anyone come in and identify as
a wounded dog,
as an animal. So,
okay. But what do you do in that situation? Because you said it's not my job to tell a child how to identify.
Yeah, I think that I have to be very careful, because the state absolutely would take my license if they said I was trying to convert people away from their identity. So
even if the identity was a wounded dog?
I don't even know. I suspect they could file a complaint against that. Like there's just so much broad acceptance right now. So I think that if a client came in and was like, I feel like I identify as an animal, I'd probably want to say something like, which MultiCare wouldn't have let me do, but try to figure out like what has happened in your life to make you so traumatized by being like so traumatized that you can't even identify as human anymore. Yeah. Or is this something else? Like, are you looking for some sort of attention or acknowledgement? Like what's going on here,
Okay. So instead of, you're not going to be like, no, you're not. It's sort of a, let's just talk this
dig
through.
Deeper. Yeah.
let's figure out how we got here. It's such a fascinating profession. Especially now, and especially with kids. Do you feel like, though, nationally, if we take ourselves out of loony bubble that we're in here, right? I feel like there's been some promising movement away from the automatic medicalization of kids.
I think people are starting to pay attention, yeah, and that's so encouraging to me.
Is it because it happened globally first, and there's more of like this, okay, it's happening in places in Europe where they're winding things back, so maybe just a domino effect?
Yeah, maybe. And then I've heard from people that they think that the more detransitioners who sue, the more attention that's going to get from people too, and then maybe we'll start making some changes.
unDivided is sponsored in part by Future 42, making Washington a place for all to prosper. If you're frustrated by the results of the last election or frustrated by the direction of what's happening in Washington state, sign up for Future 42's newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to turn that frustration into action and actively get involved in making our communities and our state a better place. Future42.org, future42.org. We all know that it's a difficult political environment for landlords, big and small, in Washington state. With new restrictions, new bills, new requirements, new taxes, you need to make sure that you have someone in your corner as a landlord to help you navigate this environment. Become a member of RHA today, the Rental Housing Association of Washington. RHAWA.org, RHAWA.org. It's about $260 a year. And not only do they advocate for landlords every single year when it comes to policy-making decisions, so you're helping helping when you become a member with that kind of work, but they're also going to be in your corner as a landlord, help you navigate the legalese, the difficult world of regulations that can vary city to city, county to county, and obviously state to state. So especially if you're a small to mid-sized landlord and you don't want to go it in this political environment on your own, become a member of RHA today. rhawa.org, rhawa.org. All right, the new year is upon us. That means you might be making some sort of New Year's resolution. How many of you are planning on making a New Year's resolution to lose weight or get healthy? We particularly feel that pressure after the holidays because let's be honest, there's a lot of food intake involved in the holidays and you might be feeling less than ideal, like you put on a few pounds, low on energy. Well, I have something that you can do for yourself today. Schedule a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team over at Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I lost 30 pounds in 2 months on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program, and I've been able to keep it off for 2 years through some simple, healthy lifestyle changes. There's no drugs, no injections, no strenuous workout routines. They just teach you what to eat in the right portions and how to take steps to keep the weight off for life. So do what I did, what so many other undivided viewers and listeners have done. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation with Dr. C today. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. That's EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. I've asked you this before, but it was pretty soon after you had first sort of come out about whether you regretted it in any form or fashion. Now that you have some distance away from that decision to, lose your job, essentially, 2 jobs, and come out publicly, I guess in hindsight, how do you reflect on that decision?
It's definitely been crazy. Like, it's hard to feel like, oh my gosh, I turned my life upside down and did I even make any change? And then also, I don't regret it. Like, I feel like I had no choice. People, when they say things like, you're so brave, like, I don't feel like it was never a decision. Like, you just do the right thing. Like, that just felt like an automatic thing that I had to do. I did have someone reach out to me recently and were like a former client, and they were very upset with me. So that was the first mean email or mean contact I had received. And so that was really hard because I genuinely don't want to hurt anybody. Like, I genuinely just want people to know I'm trying to care about them. But the feedback I got from the people I talked to was sometimes you can love people perfectly and still they won't like you for it. So I just have to keep doing what's best for me. But no, I have no regret. This needs to change. We're hurting kids. And I feel like anyone who goes along with it I don't understand.
So as a former patient was a young person and they just saw stuff on the internet and learned about it. Oh, that does have to suck because I'm sure you spent a lot of time trying to help them.
I did, yeah.
You speaking up matters, obviously. I think the more voices, the better. Who are the most important voices in this conversation that should be speaking up against what's happening and aren't?
Well, the medical system, I would say, doctors, pediatricians, therapists. I think all those people who are, whether aware or not, complicit in this assembly line of getting kids different hormone therapies. I think people need to start talking about that.
Do you think it's because they believe in it or because they're worried about their jobs?
I think it's divided. I think some people genuinely are I just don't have the courage to do that. I hope other people say things and speak out and that this eventually changes, but I can't lose my job over this. And I think some people, it's almost like a cult mentality, right? People who buy into this, being best practice, genuinely, I think some of them really believe it and are almost hostile against anyone who doesn't see it their way.
What do you think history will say about it? In 100 years?
Well, somebody, it might have been even you, said they're going to liken it to lobotomies. How could we possibly have allowed that to happen? Why we were so stupid? How could we have done that to people?
And you could be I didn't. I spoke out about that. I mean, I really believe you're right. I've come around on this issue a lot. And I don't know if I've ever gotten your opinion on it specifically, but I'm more libertarian, so I have more freedom the better. You do you, right? And so I'm totally fine with transgender people, adults, live your life. Just don't force anything on me. I used to be okay with kids getting gender hormone therapy, reassignment surgery if their parents said they could, because I see it as a parental rights issue. And I've changed my mind on that. I just don't think, if you're that young that you should be making a change like that to your body that you might not be able to reverse. Do you have an opinion on that? Whether state law should allow minors to get surgical gender intervention?
I think in an ideal world, that wouldn't be allowed for anyone under 25. I think that their brain should be fully developed before they I don't think you can consent to this kind of lifelong, like becoming a medical patient for life before your brain's fully developed. But I also am like, okay, if people could just be 18, if they're just 18, then whatever, like just do you and live your life and be happy. But like, hopefully we're seeking some therapy before you get to that point and making sure that there's nothing else in place here that's maybe making you think you would be happier as another gender if that's not the case.
Well, especially if in circumstances where you're cutting the parents out, because parents do have to consent to surgical intervention in our state, unless you're deemed a mature minor, but they don't have to consent to gender hormone therapy. And that seems like it could have just as much of an impact on a young person.
Yeah. There's like so many different side effects that they're saying, like, infertility possibly, and like bone density issues and maybe cancer. Like, why would you sign your kid up for that? I don't know.
Yeah. In the course of, patients that are dealing with gender issues, you talked earlier about detransitioners. And we've had a detransitioner on the show, and I was like heartbroken. I mean, very happy for him, because like happier than ever now, but went through this just awful period of depression and just feeling miserable, right, for 2 years, and had come out on the other side like, I'm glad I didn't do X, Y, Z. And I think those voices are so important, although they're vilified, and it's so weird to watch them vilified. But did you have patients have you had patients who are like therapy has made them realize they do feel fine in their body? You know what I mean? Like, does therapy work to get kids back on the right path?
Yeah. I don't know if I credit myself, but I think that like at least creating this place where people can like figure it out without there's no pressure like for them to make a decision right now, because they're not going to be doing anything right now. Like we're not rushing any medicalization. But I have had kids come in and be like, I feel like this gender or that gender. And recently I had somebody say, I think I actually am the right gender. I think that before I was just thinking that the right way to be male was to be X, Y, or Z, and I don't look like that. And so I thought maybe I wasn't male, but now I know like I am. There's more than one right way to be my gender. And so that was like so nice to hear.
I'm sure it varies, but generally speaking, if a parent has a child dealing with a gender dysphoria issue, how long should they spend in therapy? How much time should they dedicate to working and helping their kid work on like their mind and mental health before going to another step?
I don't know. I think wait until they're 18 at least.
Yeah.
Whether that means they're in therapy the whole time or not, I don't know. But like, just give them time to figure out who they are. Yeah.
Well, Tamara, you're on this for a series called Truth Tellers. And I mean, you're the perfect example of the kind of truth teller that we need more of in our society. And I guess I would ask you for other people who, regardless of the issue, who feel very strongly about something, who might be worried about the consequences of speaking up, what would you say to them? Don't do it?
No.
No.
Definitely do it. I don't have any regrets, even though it's been hard. There's been some days and weeks that have been harder than others, but like I've always been able to fall asleep with like the sense of peace that I did the right thing, and that I'm not just watching something that I don't agree with or that I find terrifying happen without saying something about it. So connect yourself with other people who are like-minded so you can have support. The Courage Coalition has been incredibly helpful for me, just giving me the support, raising money to help support my kids and I. So reach out to people who are like-minded and just try to connect yourself so that you don't feel like you're standing all alone.
Yeah, and as far as MultiCare or any other hospital system that is offering, gender reassignment or gender care for minors, what do you need to see from them, especially MultiCare, to know that your concerns were taken seriously?
Well, I think some change, like as far as like being really clear about what is going to change. I would like for them not to allow young people to start hormone therapy. I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but other places are doing it right. So I would like for that to happen, for therapists to not be mandated to write letters for clients who come in with gender distress, to let them still do their jobs and ask questions, without being judgmental or trying to sway them, but just see them as people with other factors at play too.
To let you do your job.
Yeah, exactly.
Let you do your job. If people are interested in maybe seeking your services or just connecting with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I have a Psychology Today profile, and then I have a website too. So Pietzke Counseling. Pietzke is a tricky one, but
you can spell it. It'll be on the screen below you, so
Okay.
it'll be fine.
Pietzke.
There you go. Well, Tamara, thank you so much. Thank you for being a truth teller. Thank you for seeing this all through. And I'm hopeful that there's positive change on the horizon. I think we just got to keep pushing.
Me too. Absolutely.
That has been the fifth and final episode in our special series, Truth Tellers. Thank you so much for watching, tuning in, and hearing what these important truth tellers have to say. We look forward to returning to our regularly scheduled episodes of Undivided on Monday, January 6th. Until then, make sure you sign up to support our show. It's just $5 a month, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com.